Let's continue with example 4. Write a rule for absolute value function. How can you rewrite this function? F of x is equal to absolute value 6x plus 18 as a piecewise-defined function. Your absolute value will be part of a piecewise-defined function because you will see a V shape. Whether facing upward or downwards, you'll see a V shape. That means you have two different equations, a linear graph, for one function. So first, we want to find the zeros of the function so that we can plot the major points. You can figure that out by plugging in 0 into f of x and figuring out which x values will make 0. And for this absolute value, only -3 will make 0. Sometimes, a lot of times, there may be two different zeros because it is very common that you will find two x-intercepts for absolute value function. So the graph passes through -3, 0. Whoops. And so this is an absolute value function. So you will see two different slopes. And 0 will be the least value. Because this is a positive graph, it's going to be a V shape facing upward. Okay, so the slope will be negative first and then a positive. So we're going to step 2. We're going to determine the slope and equation of each piece of the function by testing x values on either side of -3. So from -3, that's your minimum value, right? We want to plug in some other points to see if the graph is going down or up, so whether or not it's increasing or decreasing. So choose a point. So let's pick -4 and we'll pick 0, and then -4 is less than -3. And if we solve for f of x using substitution, we will get -4, 6. That means we have a point -4, 6. And the slope could be figured out because now we have 2 points. So once you get a point, so first step, get a point. Second step, use the slope formula, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1 to get a slope of -6. And then pick any point that is greater than -3 on the right side of your graph. So 0, 18. So what we're doing, -3, 1, 2, 3 is 0 is right here, and that's the minimum value. So we pick an x value that is on the left side, and that's -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we just figured out the slope here. It's -6. And then we pick another point, 0, because 0 is an easy number. But 0, if you let x equals to 0, 6 times x is 0 plus 18 is 18. So you have a 0, 18. So then you'll have somewhere over here, 0, 18. And then your graph will go this way, okay? And so then your first equation would be -6x minus 18. Your second equation would be 6x plus 18. So now that we have two equations, we're going to write the piecewise-defined function. As we have looked at the previous examples, you can write piecewise-defined function using this function notation. So f of x is equal to -6x minus 18 for x is that x less than -3, and 6x plus 18 for x greater than equal to -3. So we can use technology and confirm that this is true by graphing. Okay? So here you'll see that the vertex is -3, 0. So any absolute value will also be able to written as a piecewise defined function like these. The parent function of the absolute value is absolute value of x, and you can write this as x comma for x greater than or equal to 0 and negative x for x less than 0. So let's look at try number 4 and see if you can do this by yourself. How can you rewrite each function as a piecewise defined function? Now you have two absolute values, absolute value function. Please see if you can solve it by yourself and come back when you're ready for answers. Pause the video and see you later. Okay, are we ready to check answers? Let's look at the first one. Absolute value of negative 5x minus 10. So first, we want to find the zeros. That's step 1, right? So step 1, right? Find the zeros of the function. 0 is equal to negative 5x minus 10 absolute value. And so that could be negative 5x minus 10 equals to 0, plus or minus 0 actually. But it's equal to 0, so we're only gonna get one answer as well. Okay, so that's just 0. And so you can have 5x is equal to negative 10, and x is equal to negative 10 over 5, which is equal to negative 2. So you have a point of negative 2, comma 0. Okay, so on your graph, you're imagining negative 2, comma 0 right here. And that's going to be the minimum because this graph is a positive graph and your graph is going to face upward. So let's pick a point that is on the left side of your x equals negative 2. So say negative 3, right? So when x is negative 3, then f of negative 3 is equal to negative 5 times negative 3 minus 10, absolute value. And so that's multiplication, so we have 15 minus 10. 15 minus 10 absolute value would be absolute value of 5, which is just 5. And so we have a point, negative 3, comma 5. So figure out the slope for this equation on the left side. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's negative 2, that's negative 3, and that's 5, right? So since we have 2 points, we can use the slope equation to figure out our slope. Our point here is negative 3, comma 5. And so with negative 2, comma 0 and negative 3, comma 5, we're going to subtract the y values and subtract the x values to figure out the slope, which is negative 5. And so your y is equal to negative 5x. Your first equation should be negative 5x plus b. We can figure that out by plugging in any of these points. Let's plug in negative 2 and 0. When x is negative 2, your y is 0. So your b is equal to negative 10. So your first equation would be y is equal to negative 5x minus 10. Okay, so that's when your x is less than negative 2. Of course, your graph goes on and on and on, right? And the other side of it, you can use the same method to figure out the other side. First, plug in So in the second step, when x is -2 maybe, or when x is 0. So plug in a random x that's on the right side, that's bigger than your minimum value, which is -2 in this case. And then you will figure out another point that's on this graph. And using those two graphs, -2, 0, and the other graph, you will figure out the other slope, which is 5, +5. And you'll figure out the other y-intercept, which is +10. And so your first equation is this, and your second equation should be 5x plus 10. And so your final function notation for a would be f of x is equal to -5x minus 10 if x is less than -2, and 5x plus 10 if x is greater than equal to -2. So this is for part A. And in the same way, you do the same thing for part B. And let's just check answer for part B. Part B would be f of x is equal to x plus 3 if x is less than 0, and -x plus 3 if x is greater than or equal to 0. All right, so that was our fourth example, changing our absolute value function into a piecewise defined function. I hope that helped. Let's continue with the next example in the next video. Bye!